Alright guys, well, this is why you always want to be prepared. So I don't know how long I'm going to be out here.
Hi, I'm Sam Walker. Welcome to RV and Jeep Fire Safety. For the next few minutes, we're going to talk about the dangers that we face as RVers and Jeepers when it comes to fire safety. Here are a few examples of devices or scenarios that we use or face every day while RVing. Using portable propane or electric heaters, absorption-style refrigerators, high amperage electrical use through inverters, complex wiring system using multiple voltages, miles and miles of wire and cabling run through concealed spaces, cooking in small spaces with hot pots and pans near the edge of a small-sized stove. Overloading due to the need to carry everything, including the kitchen sink. Brake fires due to the overloading or lack of maintenance of the rig. Traffic collisions with fire and those with the potential for fire. Fires introduced to your coach from the exterior that include barbecues, campfires, fires from other RVs in a crowded campground, fires from the environment in which the RV is parked. And who could forget our old friend, smoking? And here's one that's often overlooked. How long will it take you to go from the back of your coach all the way to your main exit door? Or how long will it take you and the other occupants to open and escape from the emergency window? Jeeps present their own sets of fire-related risks. They include gasoline and oil leaks, pushing vehicles beyond the original design parameters, traffic collisions, rollovers, altered electrical systems with high amperage demands from winch and inverter, chafed wires without proper circuit protection, traveling over combustible vegetation, oily rags, campfires, catalytic converters, and who could forget smoking? Now that we've talked about some of the RV and Jeep risky business that we face, now we're going to talk about classes of fires. There are 5 general types or classes of fires. They are represented by the alphabetical letters A, B, C, D, and K. Here are some examples of a Class A fire. Class A fires include ordinary combustibles such as wood, paper, unmelted plastic and rubber, and cloth or clothing. Here are some examples of Class B fires. Class B fires include flammable or combustible liquids including gasoline, diesel fuel, grease, and oil. Here are some examples of Class C fires. Class C fires include energized electrical equipment. The key to this class is the word energized. Once energized electrical equipment is de-energized, it reverts to one of the other more appropriate classes. Here are some examples of Class D fires. Class D fires include combustible metals such as magnesium, lithium, or sodium. These fires require Class D extinguishing agent or clean, dry sand to extinguish. The extinguishing method depends on covering the burning material to smother the chemical chain reaction caused by the introduction of air. Fortunately, while impressive when they occur, true Class D fires are very rare. Here are some examples of Class K fires. Class K fires are kitchen fires that generally involve cooking oils or grease from fryers. And again, the classes of fires are A, B, C, D, and K. Now that we've talked about the classes of fires, we're going to talk about brands of fire extinguishers, types of fire extinguishers, what you should carry and what you shouldn't carry. Fire extinguisher types range from standard ABC or BC rated dry chemical units to pressurized water to carbon dioxide to halon and halotron to dedicated Class D and K units. We will talk about each of them in some detail. First, the ABC dry chemical unit. This is the kind of fire extinguisher that most of us have in our RVs and Jeeps. Generally, we have the small 2.5 pound size. While these satisfy the requirements of having a fire extinguisher, these units are inferior in size and knockdown power. This is similar to taking a .22 caliber handgun to a gunfight. Something is better than nothing most of the time, but you had better be good and fast to have a chance of winning. A bigger ABC fire extinguisher with a discharge hose instead of a nozzle will give you a better chance of actually extinguishing a fire with a dry chemical fire extinguisher. I would consider a 5-pound unit with a hose to be the minimum. A 10-pound unit is better. While we're on the subject of quality of dry chemical fire extinguishers, there's a major difference between what's known as a better quality extinguisher and a cheap extinguisher that you would find in a retail store. The Kitty brand, like this 2.5-pound fire extinguisher, has a plastic head and a plastic siphon tube that runs down the inside. These parts are subject to early failure, as early as 1 or 2 years out. The better quality extinguisher, in this case an Amerex brand, has a solid metal handle. They make them in metal and in aluminum. This one particular one has a metal handle. And all metal parts on the inside, including the siphon tube. So what ends up happening is this extinguisher is cheap to buy, but you end up having to replace it or not knowing whether it's going to work. Whereas the quality of the Amerex, the Badger, the Century, or the Ansel brand fire extinguishers shows through year after year. And to help prove my point about the lesser quality extinguishers, Kitty Corporation has had numerous recalls in the last several years regarding their plastic fire extinguishers. I'll have the website available for you to check the recall at the class. Here are some pictures of recalled Kitty Corporation fire extinguishers. The next type of fire extinguisher we'll talk about is a pressurized 2.5-gallon water extinguisher. This particular one is an AFFF foam variant, which allows me to fight both Class A and Class B fires. The normal pressurized water extinguisher has a hose that looks much like this, with a smooth, small nozzle at the bottom. This is basically nothing more than an industrial-grade squirt gun. 2.5 gallons of water, pressurized to 100 psi. Very effective on Class A fires. And if you're not going to have a constant water source available off of your coach, I highly recommend a pressurized water or foam extinguisher as a backup to your dry chemical. The next type of fire extinguisher we're going to talk about is Halotron.
Halotron 1 is discharged as a liquid, which quenches the heat in the fire zone. Unused agent then rapidly evaporates, leaving no residue. This is in contrast to the more conventional dry chemical-based agents, such as ABC Dry Chemical, which, although effective and efficient at extinguishing Class A, B, and C fires, leave a solid powder residue. This residue can be significant and can cause significant downtime due to extensive cleanup needed if discharged onto sensitive equipment, including electronics. Halotron 1 Clean Agent provides the significant extra value of a rapidly evaporating liquid that is effective on Class ABC fires and is available at a relatively low price to the end user.
The carbon dioxide extinguisher works similarly to the Halotron type fire extinguishers in the fact that it leaves no residue. However, because of the heavy weight of the cylinder and the necessary amount of extinguishing agent to hold a fire in check, it is not commonly used in RV and Jeep applications. Now we're going to talk about Class K fire extinguishers. We are joining a discussion already in progress regarding the difference between Class ABC dry chemical and Class K fire extinguishers in a kitchen fire.
Then the extinguisher is activated. An intermittent discharge application was used to simulate what might be expected from a novice operator. Suppression is achieved no less than 10 times, but the shortening continues to reignite. We ran another test using a 2.5-gallon pressurized water extinguisher with the following results. The operator was standing back approximately 18 feet from the fryer and still had burning shortening splash on his protective clothing. It made little difference whether a straight stream or a broken pattern was used. The Amerex Model B260 wet chemical extinguisher has been tested and listed by Underwriters Laboratories for Class K applications. The Model B260 contains 6 liters, approximately 1 1/2 gallons, of a potassium-based solution, which is discharged through a fine mist spray nozzle, much like a wet chemical fixed system. The fire is extinguished by the cooling effect of the liquid, discharged as a fine spray, coupled with the smothering action of a soap-like foam created when the extinguishing agent comes in contact with the heated shortening. Not only has the Model B260 passed UL's Class K testing, it also qualifies for Class A requirements with a rating of 2A-K. The 2A rating meets NFPA's requirement for protection of solid fuel cooking and makes the unit applicable for use anywhere in the restaurant. This means the Model B260 is not only effective on Class K fires involving cooking media, but it is also just as effective as a 2 1/2 gallon water extinguisher on Class A fires, has some effectiveness on Class B fires, and has passed UL's test for Class C rating.
Amerex has made a strong case that the Class K fire extinguisher could be a good all-around unit for the RV Jeep application. When it comes to carrying your fire extinguisher in the Jeep, the question becomes, do you hard mount or do you store the fire extinguisher loose? For the 2 1/2 pound fire extinguisher, hard mounting is fairly easy. You can take the extinguisher and hard mount it to the roll bar on either side in the back of the Jeep. However, when you get up into a 10-pound model, it becomes a problem of size. That much extinguisher up high can become unwieldy. So what I choose to do instead is to store the fire extinguisher at the base of all of the rest of the stuff that is put into the back of the unit, secure all the stuff down, which then secures the fire extinguisher. However, when needed, it can still be produced relatively quickly with no need for exterior space to be open around it in a crowded Jeep environment. So out of that compartment with no brackets, the 2 1/2 gallon water and the 10-pound ABC came out at the same time. So I'm sure you're all wondering what the walkers carry. So in the bin underneath the coach, we have a 10-pound ABC and the pressurized foam extinguisher. In the back of the Jeep, behind the tailgate, we have a 10-pound ABC. In the bedroom, underneath the bed, is a 10-pound ABC. And in the last compartment back by the rear wheels, on the passenger side, is a 5-pound ABC. 35 pounds of dry chemical and 2 1/2 gallons of water. And then anytime that I'm at a campground, I hook up a 50-foot garden hose to the water outlet for the coach and have it ready to go in case there's a fire inside or outside of the coach that would demand a constant water source. When it comes to activating a fire extinguisher, the acronym you want to remember is PASS, P-A-S-S. P stands for pulling the safety pin. A stands for aiming the fire extinguisher at the base of the flames. S stands for squeezing the handle all the way down. The second S stands for sweep the nozzle side to side at the base of the flames. Okay, so far we've talked about some of the risks that we face as RVers and Jeepers having to do with fire safety. We've talked about the classes of fires, and we've talked about the types of fire extinguishers. Now we're going to switch gears and do a little bit of case study. The first one is about Craig Phillips' RV refrigerator from last year. The second one is Casey from Coyote Works in Oregon when he burned down his Jeep while out on a trail. In early November 2018, Craig and Donna Phillips were on a trip in Arizona with their 2007 Newmar Ventana motorhome. The coach had a 12 cubic foot Norcold Model 1200 four-door absorption style refrigerator. This refrigerator model was subject to 2 recalls. The first of the recalls was to install an overheat temperature sensor in the area of the burn tube. The second recall was to replace a potentially faulty circuit board that controls the refrigerator. Craig reported that both of the recalls had been accomplished on their coach. Craig and Donna had noted in the days prior to their incident the refrigerator cooling capacity had diminished, and they were making plans to replace the cooling unit with a compressor-driven variant. On November 6th, they were in Parker, Arizona at an organized campground. At around 10 a.m., Craig and Donna were preparing to go on a bike ride. Donna was already outside, and Craig was inside the coach. Donna noticed fire coming out of the refrigerator access panel on the passenger side of the coach. She yelled for Craig. Having pre-planned this situation in his head, Craig immediately took action. He grabbed one of what would ultimately be 4 ABC-type portable fire extinguishers. He pulled the refrigerator access panel and discharged the fire extinguisher at the flames. The first extinguisher, a 5-pound unit, did not extinguish the flames. At some point during this initial firefight, the fire was blowtorching flammable ammonia gas directly onto the thin Luan plywood inside the coach. Very quickly, the Luan was compromised. This led to fire spread to the interior of the coach. The fire spread first horizontally, impinging the passenger side slide, and vertically in the interior of the unfinished refrigerator cabinet up to the ceiling. Then it spread horizontally in the concealed attic space. The ABC dry chemical agent that Craig was applying was also now going directly into the interior of the coach, and was not reaching nor cooling the flames. After using 4 portable fire extinguishers that put about 20 pounds of dry chemical into the coach, Craig switched to using a pre-connected garden hose from the same freshwater spigot used for supplying the coach. He first used the hose on the refrigerator service access panel on the side of the coach. This proved ineffective at extinguishing the extending flames. During the same time, Donna was cutting off the propane at the tank and the electrical at the pedestal. With the firefight proving to be ineffective from the access panel, Craig changed tactics and went to the roof of the coach. He ripped off the vertical top vent for the refrigerator and sprayed water down through the vent hole from the roof. While Craig was on the roof with the water hose, the local fire department arrived. The fire department members set up fan-forced ventilation to get the smoke out of the interior of the coach. They also checked for fire extension by cutting holes in the ceiling on the interior of the coach. Total time from fire start to the fire department arrival was somewhere between 5 to 8 minutes. The fire was a result of a compromised coolant tube. It's unclear whether the refrigerator overheated from the loss of refrigerant or if the overheat caused the refrigerant tube to fail. So here are some of the takeaways from Craig and Donna's experience. First, it's important to note that this firefight went about as textbook as it possibly could have. Donna saw the fire start, she and Craig took aggressive action immediately, and they still almost lost the coach. Time is of the essence, and immediate action is needed. ABC dry chemical fire extinguishers do not cool the flames. They disrupt the combustion process chemically. Craig used not 1, but 4 larger 5-pound fire extinguishers and approximately 20 pounds of extinguishing agent. And after that, it still took a constant water source to cool and extinguish the flames. So once you have a fire inside your coach, you're really now in a lose-lose situation. You've made the initial attack attempt with the dry chemical or pressurized water extinguisher, and you've determined that you can't reach the seat of the fire. So you've introduced dry chemical, which is already going to make a mess. So now is the time to really become more aggressive, and the choices are to either put the fire out by damaging the coach or not putting the fire out and letting the fire burn the coach down. It's really a bad situation. So you end up having to go after the fire and chopping up your coach in the process. You can't be afraid of it, because once the fire is established, it's going to burn the coach down. In a fire situation, coach construction is not your friend. It will readily propagate and hide fire from you at the same time. Here are some of the after effects that Craig and Donna are dealing with now, 3 months later. The dry chemical is still completely everywhere in the coach, including drawers and closets that were completely closed throughout the incident. This situation was exacerbated by the fire department ventilation process. The combination of dry chemical and water introduced in the firefight damaged the carpet, furniture, cabinetry, computers, clothing, etc. As Craig said, the good news is they saved the coach. The bad news is they saved the coach. Now we're going to take a look at what happened to Casey from Coyote Works on an overlanding trip in Oregon last fall.
About an hour or so before dark, I finally came into a valley that had a lot of level ground and was looking for a place to camp for the night. About halfway across the valley, I came to an old range fence gate. So like always, I turned the Jeep off, dropped the keys in my pocket, and got out to open up the gate. As I was getting out of the Jeep, I noticed smoke starting to come out from underneath the hood, so I immediately opened the hood to see what was going on. Now, up until that moment, there was no indication that there was anything wrong with my Jeep. No warning lights on, the temperature gauge was reading normal, and it was driving just fine. Which leads me to believe that the fire had probably just started. For the next couple of minutes, things moved really fast as I jumped into action trying to put out the fire. And yes, I had a fire extinguisher, and I used both my fire extinguisher and a couple of gallons of water trying to put out the fire. So you're not going to see any more video clips until after all of my initial fire suppression efforts were exhausted. As soon as I opened the hood, flames started coming up from the back of the motor. It looked like they were originating between the rear of the motor and the firewall. So I ran around to the back of the Jeep, grabbed my fire extinguisher, and immediately began spraying it on what I thought was the source of the flames. I continued spraying my fire extinguisher on the flames until it was empty. And for a minute, it actually seemed like it was kind of effective in putting down the flames a little bit. But a few seconds after my fire extinguisher ran dry, as I was standing there looking at the Jeep, the flames flared back up. So I ran around to the back of the Jeep and I grabbed a couple of gallon containers of water, came back to the front and started splashing water on top of the flames. And again, after doing that for a few minutes, it seemed like I had the flames somewhat under control. And they were somewhat under control in the engine compartment. But what I didn't quite realize yet is they had already started to spread through the firewall and were burning inside the dash, inside the passenger compartment of the vehicle. Once I realized this, I knew there was no chance of me putting out the vehicle fire. I also knew at that point that I didn't have much time to retrieve stuff from the vehicle. I spent almost 2 hours intermittently fighting range fires and trying to cut fire line in around the Jeep. The whole time I just kept thinking, no matter what happens, I cannot let this start a range fire.
So when you've got a vehicle fire, you've got to face it aggressively. Got to get the pieces that are loose out of the way. You've got bad clearance back here. Anyway, you've got 20 seconds with your dry chemical fire extinguisher. You really got to get in there and be aggressive with your firefight. Again, got to be right down in there with the nozzle. This is where the benefit of a 10-pound or a 5-pound, 6-pound with a hose comes into play. The other angle too is to come at it from underneath. And again, you can't be afraid of it. You've got to get right in there with it. You've got to be laying down underneath and spray up at the seat of the fire. Get the extinguisher right in there. Don't be afraid to put that nozzle right up into the fire. And no matter how small your RV or Jeep fire may be, always have the fire department follow up to make sure you have full extinguishment. Over the past several weeks, I've had discussions with several RVers and Jeepers regarding the subject of firefighting. The responses have ranged from, heck yes, we're going to put that fire out, to, no, we're just going to step back, make sure everybody's out, and walk away. Neither one of these philosophies or anything in between is wrong. What is wrong is to not to have thought about it and have a plan ahead of time and make sure that all of your companions are aware and comfortable with the plan. If you do decide to fight the fire, you need to determine that the gain is going to be worth the risk. You need to make sure that you keep track of the big picture. Things change quickly. Always have an escape route and a backup plan And overall, the last thing and the most important thing always is your personal safety. Okay, to wrap this up, we've talked about the risky business that we engage in as Jeepers and RVers when it comes to fire safety. We've talked about the classes of fires. We've talked about types of fire extinguishers. We've talked about good brands versus bad brands when it comes to quality. We've talked about the advantages of mounting versus not hard mounting your fire extinguishers. We've shown you how to activate a fire extinguisher. We've covered some case studies and techniques, and we've also discussed whether to engage a fire and when. We hope this has been educational for you, and thanks for watching. How to activate a fire extinguisher. We've talked about case studies as to whether shit. So